name is Nathan Durham. I was a sergeant in the United States Army, where I served 5 years as a radar repairer. Radar is basically a big piece of equipment that's either towed by or on the back of a big truck that scans for aircraft, rockets, vehicles, anything that moves through the use of radio frequencies. So as a radar repairer in the Army, I was responsible for the basic maintenance and upkeep, as well as services for the radars, on top of troubleshooting any faults that occurred or any time the system would come out of operation. I was responsible for going and figuring out what happened to it, repairing it, and then making sure that everything was working fine after that. My training was almost a year long. It was about 9-10 months long, and that happened in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My first duty station coming out of Oklahoma was in Joint Base Lewis McChord up in Washington State. I first deployed in October of 2016 to Iraq for 9 months. I was in Kiara West Airfield, which is like northern Iraq, just south of Mosul. And then I deployed again in November of 2018 first to Camp Leatherneck, Afghanistan, and then eventually I was moved to Jalalabad, Afghanistan, which is a base called Fob Fenty. They were very different from each other. The first one I was very eager for and really excited to go on, because I feel like that is kind of like the goal almost, or at least in my head, the goal of being in the military was to deploy and use your training and skills that you learn, use them in an actual environment where they're needed critically. And so my first deployment I was really excited for. We knew going into it that the living conditions weren't going to be great. To give it context, Mosul was kind of where ISIS was holed up for their final stand, and so the camp I was on was kind of like a staging point for everyone going back and forth during that offensive to take the city. And so I maintained and repaired the radars that were keeping the camp safe for the engineers that were building the camp back up, as well as all the aircraft coming in and out. The homecomings are pretty cool. My first deployment, when I came home, there was a big ceremony that the unit put on. My wife was really one of the only people that came up to see it, and it was just really special. I didn't know I was so excited to come home and see her again until I really saw her in person, I feel like. And then from there, I was told, you're not going to deploy again, you're not going to deploy again. And then in October of 2018, they were like, hey, you're going to Afghanistan in like a couple weeks, we think. We're actually not sure when you're going, but you're going to go. Leaving for Afghanistan was really, really hard for me. I don't know that I've ever not wanted to do something as much as I did not want to go on that deployment to Afghanistan. Where we were at was kind of like a training area for the Afghanistan National Army, or the ANA. The living conditions were a lot better in Afghanistan than they were in Iraq, but the area we were in was much worse. For my Afghanistan homecoming, I told my wife I was going to be home in April, but I unfortunately had an incident with my knee and I had to get sent home early, and I actually ended up coming home a whole month earlier than expected. So I was able to come home and surprise her, and I had some of our friends in on it. So I got home in the middle of the day and just showed up at her work and surprised her, and that was a lot of fun coming home. Transitioning from the Army to civilian, or like the normal world, I don't suffer, I think, from PTSD as severely as some of my friends and some of my family members that were in do. There's just a lot of, I think, mental stuff that comes with being home after having spent time in an area like that. Now I work for a company called Raytheon Technologies, and they make the radars that I worked on in the Army and other defense communication systems. My title is a field engineer, but it's more of a systems engineer. But I kind of do the same thing I did in the Army with maintenance and services, but it's pretty cool. I'm having a lot more fun with it now than I did when I first started, because I think I was a little overwhelmed by it, but I think it would have been a lot harder had I not been given the opportunities I had during my time in the Army. Ultimately, I'm very happy with the opportunities I was given in the Army and how I was able to capitalize on them and just really learn from everything I was exposed to and transition it over, coming out of the military to the life that I live now and the job I have now, and I'm very happy with where I'm at in my life.